grand finale.
Bienvenidos a la clausura del gran mes de lectura.
Tonight, we welcome the author of Into the Beautiful North, Luis Alberto Urrea.
Hoy recibimos con cariño a Luis Alberto Urrea, autor del libro Rumbo al Hermoso Norte.
Born in Tijuana to a Mexican father and an American mother, Luis is most recognized as a border writer, though he says, "I am more interested in bridges, not borders."
Luis nació en Tijuana, de padre mexicano y madre americana. Luis es reconocido como escritor del borde. Sin embargo, él dice, yo estoy más interesado en puentes que en bordes.
As a child, Luis often felt like there was a border wall running through his family's San Diego apartment. The kitchen was the United States, the living room was Mexico, Luis says. One side was struggling with all her might to make me an American boy, and the other side, with all of his might, was trying to keep me a Mexican boy. All those things that as a kid seemed so painful and were such a liability to me ended up being the strength of everything, he says.
Desde pequeño, Luis sintió que había una pared que dividía el apartamento de su familia en San Diego. La cocina era los Estados Unidos y la sala era México. Luis dice, un lado con todo su poder me quería hacer un muchacho americano y el otro lado con todo su poder me quería hacer un muchacho mexicano. Todas esas cosas que cuando uno es niño parecen muy dolorosas y difíciles, me hicieron más fuerte.
We are so grateful, Luis, that you found the strength to write your wonderful books, and we are especially grateful that you are here to share your stories with us tonight.
Todos estamos muy agradecidos, Luis, que has encontrado la fortaleza de escribir este hermoso libro. Qué alegría es tenerte en medio de nosotros y escuchar tu historia esta noche.
Please join me in welcoming Luis Alberto Urrea.
Buenas tardes, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Tijuana in the house. ¿Quién? ¿Eres de Tijuana? Paisanita. Okay, we'll be honest. Naperville, Illinois in the house. But I was born in Tijuana. Weren't the dancers awesome? I loved that. And I love this space. I confessed to the Father earlier when I was a little boy I wanted to be a priest, so I'm feeling good up here right now. So thank you, thanks to the library, thanks to everyone in town for having me out. I apologize when I was supposed to first come out, but things happen, and I won this award that I couldn't not go to. So we switched things around, but at least I made it. I'm so happy. We've had a lovely day today. Spent the day with high school kids, which was really special. So I'm going to tell you some things about the book that you may not know. They saved me a lot of biographical stuff in the intro, so I don't have to tell you those stories. But I will say a couple of things before we get started. Usually my main task when I speak publicly is to try to answer people's burning questions as best I can. And I know from doing a lot of these that one of the burning questions is, if this guy is from Tijuana, why does he look Irish? So it wasn't my mom who was the North American, it was my dad. My dad actually was a sort of red-haired, rosy-cheeked, blue-eyed man, looked a little bit like Errol Flynn. Or he thought he looked like Errol Flynn. But our family comes from the state of Sinaloa, which has now gotten famous, because of Chapo and narco wars. But Sinaloa is a very interesting, magical state. But in the town we come from, which is Rosario, Sinaloa, which is the template for the town in the book you've read. Tres Camarones is actually Rosario. But I wanted to fictionalize it a little bit. But our grandmother, the matriarch of our family, from Rosario, Sinaloa, was named Guadalupe Murray. That's right. And my grandfather, Juan Francisco Urrea, was Basque. So Urrea is actually a Basque name, and it means golden man, or man of gold. And he was quite tall. Everybody in the family is fairly short, but he was about 6'2", and Basque. And he met the Irish lass Mexican gal, and they got married and began this genetic experiment of the Urrea family. I was born in Tijuana. We came to San Diego when I was about 4 years old. My parents had been crossing. He had a green card, and she was, of course, a U.S. citizen. And they would come to San Diego to work and then go back at night to Tijuana. And our neighborhood was called Colonia Independencia, the colony of independence. And it was interesting. A dirt street, funky, a lot of poverty around us. I wouldn't say we were poverty-stricken, but we weren't wealthy people. And in the household, it was my mom and my dad, myself, my grandmother, Murray. Grandpa had died, and my 2 aunts and some cousins. And one of my aunts was my tia Flaca. And this might be of interest to you who have read Into the Beautiful North. The other aunt was Mexico's women's bowling champion, my Aunt Irma. That's right, Aunt Irma was real. And she was the meanest person I ever knew. She was terrifying. And this is possibly a good way to get into talking with you about the book. Aunt Irma did become Mexico's female bowling champion. And she toured all around the country and other countries bowling. And I like to say to audiences that she died at 95 in Mexico City while bowling. Right? That's the way to go, isn't it? Do what you love to the very end. Now, Aunt Irma, people always ask me, why are there so many eccentric details in your novel? So I'm going to tell you why. Because my family's crazy. And my tia Flaca means skinny. I don't know if you've had, skinny, cadaverous, older women in your family background. She was very stylish, but quite slender. Though, if you can imagine this woman, she was blind in one eye from diabetes. She wore cat eye glasses with glitter. She obsessively smoked menthol cigarettes outside. She'd hold it on the side of her mouth where the eye was bad. So she'd have a squinty eye and it looked like smoke was coming out of it all the time. And now that I'm a dad and I have daughters, I've realized that sisters fight for no reason. And my 2 aunts would go at it for no reason. So, and this does not go over with the younger generation because they don't know what I'm talking about. But one day, you'll recognize this from the book, my Aunt Irma came home from a bowling tour, and she said, "Do you know who's the greatest Mexican movie actor in the world?" And my Aunt Flaca said, "No, who?" "Jules Brenner." And my Aunt Flaca was like, "Idiota! Jules Brenner. It's not a Mexican name." And she said, "I have bowled all over Mexico. I have bowled all over the world. And I was in Puerto Vallarta, and I saw Jules Brenner's house. And I saw him play Pancho Villa in a movie, and he spoke perfect Spanish." And Flaca was like, "You were an idiot. It was dubbed." But that stupid little fight sticks with you. I've always remembered that moment. And so I had written a very heavy, serious nonfiction book called The Devil's Highway, where I had to make my way into the Border Patrol and investigate a death of 14 men. And it was quite dark. And I had also just published a book that took me 20 years to research and write, which was The Hummingbird's Daughter. So I wanted to write something that made me happy. I didn't know if it would be published or not. I just thought it would be really nice to sit up here and write a story that made me laugh every day. So I started that way. And it was at a time in the ever-shifting immigration story when many men had left towns and not returned. And there were all these reports coming to me from northern Mexico especially about towns where the men were gone. There were older men and boys, but from mid-teens to 40s or 50s had left. And they were having these amazing developments of a kind of instant folk feminism where there was a power vacuum and women were stepping up to take positions. So there were towns where the first female mayor, first female police chief, first female director of college and high schools. There was even a story about the first woman projectionist in a movie theater in this town. And I was thinking, that's really cool. And I thought, so if I were going to write a book about that, what town would it be? I thought, well, Rosario, because that's the town I know, and it's eccentric and fun. And then I thought, so who would be the first woman mayor? Tia Irma. And as soon as I thought that, because when you're a writer, sometimes writing, we like you to think that it's all, endless typing and writing, but often it's a cup of coffee and some music and you're just staring at the ceiling daydreaming. It's like a cat playing with a ball of yarn. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, so Aunt Irma is the mayor, but she would do something kind of eccentric. What would she do? She would have a Yul-Brynner Film Festival. And when that came to my mind, I thought, well, what Yul-Brynner film? And I was a Steve McQueen fan, so I thought, oh, The Magnificent Seven. And as soon as I had that idea, the whole story appeared to me. I thought, wait a minute. So the men are gone, but narcos find the village, and they show The Magnificent Seven. And some young folks get inspired to reenact what happens in the movie. But then I thought, wait a minute. It's going to be teenage girls who do it. And I thought, how cool is this? Now, this sounds pretentious, but I have a movie agent, and I called him up, and I told him, and he was like, Magnificent Seven for girls. I said, yeah. So he started pitching it right away. And that's where that came from, that the young women in the town go watch the movie, and they're mocking it, and they're not, like, this is silly, but Nayeli thinks, wow, we could do that. So, Tacho. I have a wonderful, I tour for the Big Read a lot. I was telling some people at dinner, one of my favorite moments of all time was a little tiny college in South Texas. 2 buildings, tiny. And, the Mexican kids always want to talk. But I was sitting at lunch, and this young man came and sat next to me. And he said, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, what? And he said, Tacho. I said, what about him? And he said, is he single? I looked at him, and I said, he's real, right? And he said, he is? I said, yeah, he's real. I said, he's probably about 60 years old, but I think he'd kind of like you. And the kid laughed. We had a big laugh. So Tacho, real guy. It's his real name, Tacho. It isn't. I don't even know his last name, but this is the character inspired by him. When I was a kid, I would go down to Rosario, Sinaloa. One of my jobs was doing work for the Cine Pedro Infante, the same movie theater that you see in the book. I know it quite well. And one of my jobs was to drive around. If you know Mexico, you know this. We love sticking loudspeakers on top of a car or a truck, right? And drive through yelling about raspados, tortillas, whatever. You got a cheap furniture. So my job, I drive around with my cousin and my uncle's Ford LTD announcing the movies that were coming. And they were always double features. And they were mismatched. It would be like Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Love Story. And I was, like 12, 13, 14. So I'm yelling into the mic like this, Oh, el domingo, la película más increíble del mundo, Godzilla, el rey de los monstruos. It's got that's what I did. But I was, they didn't know what to make of me because they thought I was a hippie. Un hippie. You know, I liked rock music. I liked the Beatles. My relatives used to call them Los Beatles. They're like, no, men don't have hair like that. And I used to wear love beads. They're like, men don't wear necklaces. They didn't like any of that stuff. And Tacho was the only out gay kid in town. And I would see him, you know, and I thought, look at this guy. He was so brave, because Sinaloa's got some tough guys, especially in the 70s, early 70s. And he would be so bold about himself that people left him alone. And he'd be like, oh yeah, if people would say something to him, call him a name, he would go after him. Sí, soy gay, ¿y qué? ¿Y qué? ¿Qué vas a hacer? Ándale, pégame. They'd be like, whoa, calm down, man, it's okay. And he got this nickname, they'd call him Tachito el Machito. He is a tough kid. But the family didn't want me to meet him. So they never let us, but I'd watch him do stuff. So in 1980, I was back there for Christmas. And my girl cousins were going to a dance. And they said, Luis, we have to go buy some women's shoes for the dance. And I said, where are you gonna go, man? It's Christmas Eve. And they said, well, we're going to Tacho's house. And I said, wait a minute, are you serious? And they said, yeah, Tacho has a closet full of women's clothes. I was like, and they said, you want to come? I said, yeah. So we drove to Tacho's house, and the way you meet him in the book is really the way he was when I met him. We went to his apartment, and he was all, you know, fussing with the girls and so forth. And he had a red bandana around his head, and he had a beauty spot painted on his cheek. He had a little Freddie Mercury mustache, you know. And they said, Tacho, this is our cousin Luis. And he said, hi. I said, Tacho, man, I've been watching you since 1970. He was like, really? And I didn't get it, you know. And I said, yeah, I love you. And he said, really? I was like, no, not like that. I admire you. Why? So we started talking. So a lot of the jokes that he says in the book, or the witticisms, come from hanging out with Tacho, the real Tacho. So when I was working on the book, and I was thinking, you know, it could be a really interesting parable, right? It's like Joseph Campbell for teenage young women that have to go through the hero's journey, just like Mad Max or Beowulf or Childe Harold or something. But, you know, Nayeli needs a companion that loves her. And I don't want romance to get in the way. And I thought, yeah, Tacho would be her best friend. And he's noble, you know, he will go to protect her. And so I wrote it. Now, when the book came out, my cousins are still friends with Tacho. And so when the Spanish edition came out, they took him a book. And they said, we're going to take it to Tacho. So they did. And then there was a long silence. So I finally wrote to my cousin and I said, so what happened with Tacho? And they said, he has become insufferable, man. He carries it around. He says to people, I told you I was special. So Tacho, he's all right. Some other characters in it you might be curious about. They're not all inspired by real people. Some are accidentally about real people. If you remember Vampi, the goth girl, the vampire girl, Veronica, well, I thought that was funny. I thought a goth in a tropical Mexican town was funny, right? It was weird, and we're trying to be eccentric. Turns out, I did not know I had a goth niece in Culiacan, Sinaloa. And when the book came out, her dad wrote me, and he said, my daughter's so happy. She said, you see, Dad, Tio Luis understands me. So I was kind of heroic without meaning to be. The boyfriend of Vampi that she meets, the Aztec warrior, interesting, we had Aztec dancers, El Brujo, he's inspired by a real person in Naperville. He was a busboy, yeah, in Naperville. You need to know, if we ever hang out, if there are Mexican people, I can't stop myself. I have to talk to them. I love Spanish, and it's like a vacation for me. And I notice that if we speak Spanish to each other, it's just an instant bond. Family right away. Ask my wife. Everywhere I go, I've got these new cousins. I'm always inviting them home. Come on, come to our house. So we were eating in this restaurant, and it's an interesting place. It's a breakfast place, only breakfast. And the bankers and the businessmen in town go there for breakfast. Very conservative guys, all Republican guys. And he's a busboy. And we were eating our pancakes, and this little Aztec warrior keeps going by, and he's covered in tattoos. 666, Satan, dragon, upside down pentagram. I was like, look at this guy. And we watched him, and I said, the guy's Mexican. And Cindy said, how do you know? And I said, look at him. He looks like an Aztec warrior. He had a ponytail. So he went past our table, and I said, hey, buenos días, amigo, ¿cómo estás? And he stopped like this. And he looked at me with these huge eyes, and I said, no, I'm not the Border Patrol. I was born in Tijuana. And as soon as he found out, he talked and talked. And he told us this story I thought you'd appreciate. So he has all the tattoos because he's a heavy metal guitar player. And he came to the United States because he thought he'd get on MTV and be famous, because his parents are old and poor and sick in Mexico, and they were going to die. So he gave up his life and came to the United States, and he was sending all of his money home to them. He lived 6 miles from the restaurant, and he walked back and forth 6 miles before dawn and then after closing, sending them all his money. And he was a straight edge guy. He had never taken drugs. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He just shredded on his guitar. So he got a chronic sore throat, and he went to the walk-in clinic, and they found he had a tumor. He had throat cancer, and he was going to die. He couldn't get it done. He had no health care. And the waitresses started telling the gentleman, who all knew him because he had been their busboy for a couple of years, that he was sick. And those guys, in spite of politics or how, what they felt about it, pooled their money, and they bought him his surgery to save his life. And then they bought him a new bike so he could go to work. And I thought, that was so cool. And it was sort of a background thing about humanity shared, in spite of what we feel or what we think or what our politics are one way or the other. Just two, people who see each other and care about each other. So I put him in because he's funny, but I also wanted, for me, that vibe in the book to remind me of the humanity of everybody, that we can all connect together. Atómico. I heard the murmurs. Atómico is my most popular character. It kills me. People love this guy. And fans send me Atómico coffee cups. I have plaques that say, I am Atómico. I was telling the librarians, somebody made me his fighting staff. It's got a Hearst power shifter in the end and all that. And I was going to bring it, but I thought, I couldn't probably take it into the high school this morning. Can you imagine? No weapons allowed. I almost brought it to show you. So, and God bless all of you in book clubs. You ladies are amazing. And, we get invited, Cindy and I, to people's beautiful homes and sit down and have nice meals, usually beans. So, you can serve crepes or something if you invite me, because I've had a lot of beans. But they always tell me, we love that Atomic kid. That Atomic kid, he's got such pep. And now we say, ladies, seriously, if that guy came in here right now, shaved head, tattoos, bandana, 6-foot fighting stick, y'all would jump out the windows and run. So something happened with him that people like a lot. So it makes me happy. So that's a quick rundown. And I just want to tell you the story about Nayeli herself. Who inspired Nayeli? I'd like to take credit for coming up with Nayeli. And by the way, people always ask me, are you missionary Matt? And I say, I am Atómico. Don't come at me with missionary Matt. He was actually, I worked in a missionary crew, I'm going to tell you about in a second. But he was an actual boy that I knew. I'm inspired by a boy that I knew. And I didn't know this because if you remember, missionary Matt has sort of lost Jesus and he's drifting and he's smoking crack and stuff. I didn't know that that actually happened to the person I was thinking of, and he died of drugs. So that felt kind of strange to me. But I worked in Tijuana with the poor for a long time. My father died when I was a senior in college. He died in the hands of bad Mexican cops and federales, and they made me buy his corpse. I was 20 years old. They wouldn't let me bury him until I bought the body, which was pretty cataclysmic. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to process those things. All I could do was write, because I'd always been the kid with the notebook. I'd always been the kid writing stories and poems, and so I wrote about it. And my English professor in college had invited a famous author to come as a visitor, Ursula K. Le Guin, if you know science fiction. And he took her the story, and she took me in. She took me into her workshop, and then she published it in her anthology of fiction and trained me to be a writer. So thanks to Ursula, I started a career. But I graduated. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I, for some reason, just wanted to do something of value because everything seemed valueless. So I joined this group that worked in Tijuana, the Tijuana Municipal Garbage Dump. So the scenes in the novel where you see the dump, that's the actual dump. I spent almost 10 years there. And there's a little blue house they seek shelter in. That's a real house. Sometimes I have a slideshow and I can show you the actual house that they sleep in the novel. It's all based on reality. So just so you know, that's the real place. That's what it looks like. There really are ghostly moments when the paper bags and the plastic bags lift up in the air and start to just slowly move, and thousands of gulls look like smoke above them. Giant tractors are driving through. People are working with staffs picking garbage, and they dig garbage mines. And if you go down the garbage mine to excavate trash, you have to put up a flag so the giant tractor doesn't crush you to death. It's a crazy place. But the people there are amazing. And you just need to know that that place is on a hill with one of the most million-dollar views of San Diego. Now, New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve, 1990, 14 babies died on that hill of exposure, while their parents could see the lights of San Diego. It tells you a lot about the situations we're facing. So I worked with those people, and there was a girl named Negra. She's a black girl. She's Tarascan from Michoacan. I met her when she was 6 years old. I was in my early 20s. Lived in the trash. She owned a one-piece dress and a pair of underpants. That was it. Barefoot. They'd shaved her head because she had scalp problems. And she lived in a garbage shack. And, I was a kid. And she wanted piggyback rides. So I'd carry her around on my back. And she trained me how to pick trash, which is quite a skill. You need to know what you're doing. We were really close. And I've known her now all her life. She's in her 40s. Cindy and I have often supported her and her family. One of her dreams was to make a beauty parlor. She wanted a Tijuana garbage dump beauty parlor because she said the women need to understand, make themselves beautiful, right? Le ponemos makeup y le pintamos lipstick. So she took over a room in a guy's shack, and we bought her the equipment to start doing hairdos and things. And now she actually has a beauty shop in downtown Tijuana. But she had kids. Nayeli was her baby. And I've known Nayeli since she was born. And if this makes any sense to you, it might not. Those people who do that work are kind of enacting a classic American dream in a weird way, in that, the parents go through hell so that their kids move up. And she was picking trash, and her kids never did. And they went to school, got educated, learned to read, and as time, as progress happened, learned to use computers and all that stuff. And I asked her one day, I said, Oye, negra, why did you never let your daughter pick trash? You could use the money, why not? And she said, sometimes you're working and you have a rock in your shoe. It hurts really badly and you can't stop though because you're busy. And I said, yeah, sure, you get a rock or a stick or something. She said, yeah. So I was picking trash. It was a good day. There was a lot of trash. And I couldn't stop. And she said, so I finally got a break. I sat down and took off my shoe. And she said, you know what it was in my shoe? And I said, no. And she said, it was a human finger. Yeah. And I just was like, oh. She said, so I decided my daughter would never do what I had to do. So Nayeli grew up. She's as described in the book. She's small, muscular. She was a soccer star. She was a girl who could not stop smiling no matter what. Always smiling, always laughing. I love her very much. And years had passed. We got married, we had kids, we were living in Naperville, and our boy, Eric, wanted to be a musician more than anything. And he's a good boy. But he was about 12 maybe, and I told his mom, our son has never seen poverty, he's never seen suffering, and he's growing up in a beautiful life, but I want him to know. So we decided to take him to the dump to try to find Negra and Nayeli and everybody. And This American Life found out that we were doing it, so they sent a producer with us. It's on their website if you ever want to listen to it. It's called Trash at thislife.org. You can hear everybody, including Nayeli. So we went, and it turned into a beautiful event. I don't have time to tell you, but it so happened that there was a junior high school graduation when we found them. So we became the taxi cab, taking people up and down the hill to the graduation, and Eric had this amazing life-changing experience. Anyway, at the end of it, the family went home. I stayed with the producer in Tijuana. My brother Octavio was with me, driving a van. And the producer said, the reporter, we'd like to give you a nice supper, take you out to dinner to Nayeli and her mom. And they were so thrilled, they got their best clothes they had on, gold shoes. And we drove them into Tijuana. And he got them a seafood feast. Crab, clams, oysters, lobster. And Nayeli was just having a field day. Wow, we were eating like crazy. And it was very sad because after it was over, we would have to drive them back up in the dark to the garbage dump. This moment of high life, and then what? Bye. We're all leaving. So we got done, and we were driving up the hill, and Nayeli had never eaten shellfish before, and went into anaphylactic shock. She was allergic. And I didn't know what was going on at first because she started making weird noises, and her hands turned ice cold. I was in the back with her and her mom, my brother and the reporter in the front of the van, and she started choking. And I started yelling to them, turn around, we've got to find a hospital. So we turned around and headed back down. She couldn't stop smiling even as she was choking. She'd look at me and smile, embarrassed. And we found a clinic. We found a private clinic in downtown Tijuana by accident. And my brother and the reporter took off to find the doctor in charge of the emergency room. And Mom, Negra, and I held up Nayeli, who was now passing out, her eyes completely white. And we come in there and we find a standoff between our guys and the doctor. And he's saying, no, no, no. as we brought her in, and he looked at Nayeli and he said, "Ella no, aquí no." And we said, "What do you mean no? Why?" He said, "She's an Indian." Nayeli's passing out. And this reporter, something I think you'll love, it's one of those nerd kind of reporters with a fishing vest, you know? It's full of tape recorders and cameras and everywhere. And he had a microphone in his pocket. And he whips it out. And the guy had his name tag, like Dr. Gonzalez, whatever. And he says, "Dr. Gonzalez, would you like to tell the millions of listeners at the United States, Europe, and all over Latin America and Mexico that you're going to allow this girl to die on the air because you, sir, are a racist? Comment?" And the guy was like, "No, senor. Oh, what a terrible misunderstanding." He just needed one shot, you know. So when the power of the media got this guy, he gave her the shot. And then we were like, "See you jerk," right? Got in the van and took off and took her home. And I had no words. I kept looking at her, and she was smiling, embarrassed about it all. And we got up to her home, and she jumped out and hugged me. She's very small. and was squeezing me, and I was hugging her, and I said, "Nayeli, I almost lost you." And she said, I know. I said, "I've known you since you were born. You almost died in my arms." She said, "I know, Luis, it's okay." I said, "It is not okay. It's not okay." And I had already published a couple of books, or else, NPR wouldn't have come around, but it wasn't like now. And I said, "Nayeli," because I was full of all kinds of fervor, I said, "One of these days I'm going to make it big. And when I do, I'm going to make you the hero of a novel." And she was like, "Okay, sure, yeah." So that's what happened, and I had to make her the hero because, I love her a lot, and I thought it would be kind of cool for her to have this adventure, even if it was fictional. But when the book came out, people found out, those of you who do Facebook, she is on Facebook, Nayeli Cervantes. She's grown up tougher than she was, always wears aviator shades. But you can see why. So she asked me one day, she wrote to me, she said, "Why are Americans writing to me on my Facebook page?" And I said, "Well, I got something to tell you." And people started naming their daughters Nayeli. And we were able to send pictures. I'd say, "Here's your first American baby." It was super cool. So part of the deal was that we would sell it to Hollywood and, then send her 10% of the money, of all the money. So we've been working on that a little bit, and it's really nice. Their life is changing. She's got a business right now where she makes Adirondack chairs. Kind of weird in Tijuana to get an Adirondack chair, but she does that. But that's just very briefly, because it's quarter till, and I need to stop so you can ask questions. But I just wanted to tell you what some of the underlying things in the book are. There's been a stage play. It's been all over the United States. It's coming back. I sold the book to TNT Network. They were going to make a series out of it, and then they got scared with all the crazy border rhetoric going on and backed out. But they had put a stop to the play. But now that they're gone, the play's coming back, which I'm excited about. And there are movie people looking at it again. So it's going to keep living. And thanks to the big read, and communities that read it, it keeps going. And the one little thing I want to leave with you about the Tijuana garbage dump that you may appreciate, it didn't really put it in the book, it didn't fit, but it's to me typical of the kind of spirit I was trying to reach for everybody in the book, the humanity of people. When my first books started coming out about the missionary work, people would ask me to take them to the garbage dump. So I used to lead these safaris, into the garbage dump. And I took a deacon from Indianapolis named Bill. Bill, nice guy. And he wanted to see this stuff, and I took him in. And it was amazing. Amazing sights, apocalyptic sights. And we were standing in the mud, and he looked down, and there was a pelt, a black belt sticking out of the mud, and it had coins on it, like conchas, And he said, "Wow, look at the belt." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I would love to take that belt to Sunday school and show everybody where the riches of man end up. And I said, that's awesome, Bill, take it. And he said, I can't. I said, why not? He said, I don't want to take it away from the people working here. So the woman from the blue house in the novel, Hermanita Panchita, Chinanteca Indian woman, little tiny woman. So she's working. And I said, Panchita, come here. She came over, sí, hermano, sí. Gives me a big hug. I said, this is Bill. Hi, Bill. I said, he found that belt. Oh, that's a great belt. I said, I know, right? He wants to take it to show it in his church. Ah, qué buena idea. Tell him to take it. I said, no. The problem is he doesn't want to steal it from you. And she says to him, like she turns into the Buddha. She puts her arms out like this, no teeth. And she says, brother, this is a garbage dump. There's plenty for everybody. So how can you not write, you know? So though the book is intentionally lighthearted in a lot of ways, I really intended it as an act of witness and a little bit subversive. I figure what I tell my writing students is laughter is the virus that infects us with humanity. And if we laugh together, it's really hard to then walk away thinking, boy, those people are animals, right? So it was interesting to me to try to write a book where we can all root for each other. You know, the cool Border Patrol agent who saves them, you know, he's inspired by the Border Patrol book I had to do before. And I wouldn't have known to write that character if I hadn't dealt with a bunch of real agents before. So each one feeds the next. And I'm so grateful this one has had such a life. And I thank you for reading it because, you know, it makes me really happy. I get to go out about 6 times a year to talk to communities, and it's super cool. So thank you. So if anybody has comments or questions, I'll try to answer them. I'll talk about almost anything. Just stand up because I'm so nearsighted I might not see your hand if you have a question. Hi. Kankakee. She said, why did I use Kankakee as a destination? I accidentally sort of became the scribe of Kankakee. They picked the Devil's Highway for an alt-city read once. And, you know, I knew that Kankakee was a Rust Belt city. They had been voted one of the worst, one of the 10 most depressed cities in America. David Letterman had sent them a gazebo on a truck, went across country as a joke, mocking them. And the mayor had to accept it, had the country laughing at him. And so the librarian, love librarians, Mary Jo, she's in the book. Mary Jo Johnston called me and said, we'd like you to come down here. We're all reading your book. And I said, oh, really, Kankakee? Yeah, come down to the library, but be careful on the road because there's lots of wild turkeys. Don't run over a turkey. And I thought, oh, man, okay, we're going to go down to Kankakee and we're going to go to some little tiny old library and, you know, Mary Jo and her ladies will have some oatmeal cookies. We'll try not to hit a turkey. And we drove down, Cindy and me, and we got to the address they'd given us, but there wasn't any little library. There was a sort of silver glass-clad HMO tower, about 8 stories tall. And I thought, oh, great, they gave us the wrong address. It's time to begin. We're lost. So we drove around, and I noticed people were walking into this building. So we pulled in, and there were 2 stone lions in front of the doors. And a bunch of them were clearly Mexicans, you know, dudes with straw hats, you know. And so we timidly went in, and she was waiting. She was like, come on, let's go. Where have you been? And I said, this is the library? And she said, yes, this is the library. Let's go. And we went upstairs, and there were 300 people upstairs. I was shocked. And then the mayor came out and gave me the key to the city. I was like, wow. I like this. Turns out he tried to give it to Arlo Guthrie. He didn't want it. So I don't care. I'll take it. But we were so moved by what was going on there that this guy, Mayor Green, he's no longer mayor, but lifelong country boy, conservative mayor of this town. He's going through this Rust Belt stuff. Everything's abandoned, and he notices that there are Mexicans in town. And rather than freak out, because he knows they're undocumented, but who are they? He went to where they were working they were working greenhouses specifically, and they were all from the state of Guanajuato, León, Guanajuato, and he thought, what the heck? So he gets the city council together, and he picks a group, and he says, let's fly to León, Guanajuato, and ask that mayor, what the heck, why are they invading Kankakee? And he did. They flew down there. And the mayor said, Mayor Green, we've been voted one of the 10 worst cities to live in Mexico. And Mayor Green said, well, we're one of the 10 worst cities to live in the United States. And they said, sister city. And so he came up with this humane solution. He thought, wait a minute, I've got part of my house, part of my city's empty. What if we do classes? What if we teach those workers, pathways to home ownership and English classes and pathways to citizenship? They changed the library, which was an abandoned HMO building that they bought for $1, put City Hall in one half and the rest a high-tech library. Let's make it a gang-free zone, truce zone, open till 10 every night. We'll stock it with all the computers we can get so the kids can do their homework. We'll put cops there to watch and he brought the town back to life. It was amazing. So I wrote a piece about it for the New York Times, and they liked that. And Mary Jo, sadly, before I got the book published or finished, died at the library. She was doing an event for kids. She had a stroke. And so I thought, I'm not going to base this character on her. I'm going to actually make it her. And I told Cindy, my wife, I said, don't tell them. I feel weird about it. And she said, they're librarians. They're going to find out. And I thought, oh, darn it. They are. And they did. And they did Mary Jo Johnson Days in honor of her. And they started a college fund in her name. And probably the nicest thing ever for me as a writer is her daughter, who came up to me and she said, my mother loved libraries, and thanks to you, she'll spend eternity in libraries, which made me so happy. You get all these opportunities to retire, you're like, yeah, I can quit now. So that's why Kankakee. It just seemed like a great place for me to talk about. And just in case they ever made a series or a movie, to have them film part of it there would be great, to bring more work. Pardon? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I learned a piece of trivia about Kankakee. I shouldn't tell you because it's top secret. All the James Bond cars are in Kankakee. That's right. The production company keeps them in a hangar at the airport. We had dinner with one of them, and he's like, you want to see them? I was like, yeah, I really do. They've got all James Bond's cars there. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, nobody knows. Now you're going to go steal them. Yeah. Anybody else? Do we have time? A little longer? Yes. How old was I when I started writing? Well, let's see, I'm 107 now. No, I always liked it a lot because I liked to read when I was a kid. And there comes that moment when you think, gosh, I'd like to do that, I used to love really strange, like science fiction stories and scary stories and stuff. So I think I started messing with it probably in junior high. And right about 9th grade, maybe, my mom saw me showing interest, and she had an old manual typewriter. This is way before your time. There were no printers, and she set it up for me in the kitchen, and she got me some typing paper. So I started typing suspiciously, huh. And I'd look at the paper, and it was super neat. Like my messy scrawl, it looked like it had been published all of a sudden. I loved that. And so I got better and better, and I was typing every day, writing stories and poems and stuff. And my mom watched, and I think I had never applied myself much. I was a bad student, daydreamer. But I ended up with a little stack of pages. And one day while I was at school, my mom sewed them together and made a book. Oh, when I came home, she handed it to me. I lost my mind. I was like, what? Showing it to the dog. Look, I got a book. And shortly thereafter, in the drugstore where we lived, they had these things called record books, which are, blank notebooks. And I thought, somebody published a book with nothing in it? I'm gonna fill it up. Now, they were only like 49 cents back then. So I started, and I was off and running. I couldn't stop. But that's when I got serious, probably in high school. And then I got really serious in college. So, how about one more? Yes? Thank you. The book that just came out in paperback, The House of Broken Angels. It's doing great. Yeah, it's in 9 languages already, which I can't even believe. Stuff that doesn't make sense to me. We just found out it's going to come out in Lithuanian and Korean. I know. It's coming out in Russia. It's pretty amazing. And they're doing a UK edition now, which is so exciting to me. It'll be out in the summer. It's in Spanish, if you read Spanish. So The House of Broken Angels is a novel inspired by my big brother's death, my brother Juan. It's not lugubrious, however. Don't think, it's torture. For all the pain they took to write the book, all the reviews talk about how doggone funny it is. And I think, wow, I must have failed, But it is funny because my brother was a very brilliant man, a very proud man, intellectual man, who wanted to sort of destroy all the myths about Mexican men that he could. He was very punctual. He was never late to anything. All the things that people say. Hardworking guy, and he had a big family. And he had been the patriarch of the family, especially after my dad died, and had been a hero to me. Anyway, he got cancer, and went through years of him being sick and then going into remission, sicker, going into remission, even sicker, going into remission. And he got very small and whittled away and tired, and it was clear he was going to pass. And he was coming up on his 75th birthday. And his granddaughter, a girl named Crystal, decided it would be really cool to give him a farewell birthday party. His last birthday party on Earth. They called him Pops. Let's give Pops a party. And my brother got wind of it, and he liked the idea. He thought, yeah, it's like I could have a wake, but attend my own wake. And I could organize my own wake, and I could force everybody to tell me how special I was, which was very much what he was like. And so we went, and all I can describe it as was the Mexican Finnegan's Wake. Just the most amazing, beautiful, outrageous, inappropriate, everything, all at once. Every kind of Mexican you ever imagined, all there at the same time. My brother sitting in the middle in his wheelchair just watching this show. So many kinds of Mexicans, even ones you don't imagine were there. For example, standing with my nephew, and suddenly a group of big old Samoan dudes walk into the yard. And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Dio, those are your nephews." I was like, wait, we got Samoans in the family? I was like, "Hey, Samoa!" They're like, "Urrea!" I thought, this is amazing. He died, but during the party, he would get ill. He would get very tired, and they would put him to bed. And he kept asking me to come back and get in bed with him, which unheard of. I'd never even hugged him, but I would spend time in bed. And as word went out that we were in bed, people, want to see that, and they'd come back and watch and then climb in bed with us. And those turned into some of the most sacred moments of my life. I have pictures of me in bed with him, and then Cindy and me in bed with him, and then Cindy and our daughter in bed with him, and then all of a sudden, all these big-ass cholos in there with him. All my siblings, all 70 years old, they're all in bed with him. And it turned out to be this joyous thing. And at the end of the party, he was lying in bed, and I went back, because I had to go on tour. I'm always on tour, and I was leaving from Texas. And I thought it'd be the last time I ever saw him, and I went into the bedroom, and he stopped me. And he said, "Don't say goodbye to me." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Don't ever say goodbye to me." I said, "What do I say?" He said, "Tell me you'll see me next time." So I took his hand, I said, "I'll see you next time." And then when I went to leave, he squeezed my hand and didn't let me go. And I said, "What?" And he said, "Later, if you see hummingbirds, that's me. Let me go." And I left, and I went to Texas, and he died. So I was trying to figure out, how do I deal with this? And Cindy kept telling me, "Write a book." And I said, what book? It's just an old man's birthday. And she said, "No, we saw something that you have to explain to everybody." And I was trying, and it wasn't working out. And we did this event with Jim Harrison. Do you know Jim Harrison, the novelist and poet, great American author, wrote Legends of the Fall. A lot of people like that because of Brad Pitt in the movie. But he came to dinner with us, and he himself was about to die. And he said to me, "Tell me about your brother's death." And so I told him the story I just told you, but with a lot of detail. And he sat like this with his head up, just listening. And when I was done, he said, "Sometimes God hands you a novel, you better write it." And I was like, wow. Jim Harrison told me to write a book, right? And Cindy's like, "What am I, chopped liver? I've been telling you that for weeks." So that's how it happened. And I'm just astounded at the life it's already had. It's in paperback, but for some reason, crazy people are still buying the hardcover. So I'm really gratified. We just went into our 9th hardcover printing and 4th paperback. So who knows? If you know a Mexican family, you understand that they all believe that it's my brother doing it. They're like, "You see how Juan is selling books for Luis from heaven?" Yeah. So it's a happy story. And it's touching me a lot because so many people come to talk to me about their families, which is super nice, It's really beautiful. Time for one more, or is that it? Okay, let's do one more. I know. There's good stuff on TV. We should get going. Is that somebody back there? Oh. Go ahead. Oh. Okay, you. Hi.
My name is Maria, and I would like to ask you, because of this group of younger people that left Mexico to find out their father, do you think that reflects a little bit of what is happening now?
Yeah.
Because of their diversity, their strength, their camaraderie?
Yeah. I do. She talked about if you didn't hear how the action of the characters, the strength of their personalities and their unity, and what they go through kind of reflects a bit of what's happening now for people. It's so strange because I started working on it before it got really strange lately on the border. But it's always been pretty strange, as you know. And I was thinking about hero's journey stories that we always hear about, hombres, warriors, and and heroes, and I thought, what if Joseph Campbell had written about the hero's journey for women? So that was my motivating factor. I was thinking about my daughters a lot. I was thinking about relatives I have who did that journey, and how hard it was. It was right before it really got awful. So, in some ways it's a fantasy, because we both know that Nayeli's experience was difficult, but not as terrible as a lot of people's experience. And I was telling folks at supper, when I do these events and I'm signing books, now, like the last 4 years, people come and they don't say anything. Empiezan a llorar. They come and they just stand there and they start to cry. Which is, I know, other people don't know what to do, and I just stand up and I say, you went through this, and they just nod. And I said, these people have no idea, do they? You suffered. And all you can do then is just, and you hug. And then people go away. Or I've had people come to me and say, we were laughing about it tonight, this woman came up to me, she said, ¿Sabes la escena en página 148? Do you know the scene that's on page 148? But I said, yes, of course. Oh, yes? And she just said, that was my mother and me. And she turned around and walked out. And I had a whole line, I couldn't stop her. I wanted to talk to her. Haunting. That was my mother and me. And it's the scene where the men break into Nayeli's hotel room. I mean, these are incredible stories. And I don't feel like I deserve that kind of, that kind of open soul. But on the other hand, if not me, who? Do you know what I mean? This happened to me when Little Brown asked me to write The Devil's Highway. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. And the editor said, why not? And I said, there's too much responsibility for so many deaths and so much suffering. I'm kind of scared of the Border Patrol. And he said, I want to ask you one question. He said, do you trust anybody else to write it? I was like, no. So the opportunity to try to bear witness to those stories and maybe open the door a little more as I go is wonderful to me. And I've worked with a lot of the young women who are going through the stuff you're talking about, and they're starting to tell their stories too. So I try to do everything I can and hook them up with editors or publishers, and that's happened. It's very exciting to watch. But it's about us living under grace. Is it perfect for me to be in a church talking? Because I think that it's sacred. To me, writing is prayer. So put it out there, see what happens. Okay. I think that's it, right? All right. Thank you so much.
I'm a little bit shorter. Good evening again. I just wanted to take a moment and share some gratitude with you all, both on behalf of the Kenosha Public Library and also on behalf of our 2019 NEA Big Read. I want to thank the St. Mark's community for once again welcoming us into this beautiful space, and also for sharing the talent of those amazing Aztec dancers. Let's have a round of applause for them one more time. I also would like to thank Kenosha Community Media and Jason right over there, who recorded both our kickoff event and this evening's event. So thank you, Jason. Yes. Of course, I want to thank Luis and Cindy for traveling here to visit with us and share stories with us both this evening and all day. They've been here going around the community, so we're really grateful for them. One more round of applause. And finally, I would like to thank all of you for coming out on a Monday night. I know coming out on a weeknight is not the easiest, but we are so grateful to be able to share this evening with you as our 2019 Big Read comes to a close. So thank you all so much for being here. Luis has kindly agreed to sign some books this evening, so for those of you, I saw quite a few of you brought your books along. We will have a table set up in the lobby. Just give us a bit of time to set it up. And thanks again so much. Have a wonderful evening.